Good morning and welcome to the Core Connection. I'm Mira Rubin here with you on Enlightened World Network. And today's topic is clarity. And what we're looking at today is clarity a mental state, or is true clarity something that actually is driven by a deeper knowing, a visceral experience of alignment and awareness. So we get to dig into the nature of clarity today. And good morning, Rosalind. So good to be here with you this morning. Welcome, welcome. And welcome to everybody else who's joining us. Before we get started, let's take a minute or two to get present. So let's take a deep breath in through your nose and hold it. And imagine clean, crisp oxygen flooding your lungs, flowing into your bloodstream, nourishing all your cells, all your organs, bringing vital life energy to your body and being. And as you exhale, exhale any tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's take another deep breath in through your nose and hold it. This time, imagine brilliant, bright light, lighting you up from the inside out, illuminating, electrifying, and energizing all your cells, your molecules, your electrons, creating a brilliant beam of light and energy from your heart out into the world. And as you exhale, exhale any remaining tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's press our palms together. Vigorously rub those hands together to feel the friction, the temperature, the pressure, the motion, the tickling and tingling when you stop, and allow all those sensations to bring you present right here, right now, into this remarkable physical form that enables you to experience life. Welcome, welcome, welcome. So as I'm moving in and out of the dimensions here, let's talk about clarity. What is clarity? We often are seeking clarity, and we typically approach the notion of clarity or the issues that we're trying to gain clarity on. We often or typically approach them intellectually, trying to think it through. We're going to think it through. We're going to reason it out. We're going to figure it out. And what is it that allows us to finally arrive at this place of clarity? What is it that happens that gives us that assurance that the path forward is clear? Is it an intellectual experience? And I'm going to introduce the possibility that perhaps it isn't. Perhaps it is an engagement, an alignment, an embodiment of a knowing, of a direction that isn't rooted in our minds, that is actually connecting to a deeper awareness. And I think we have been, as a culture here in the West anyway, we are so conditioned to the primacy of the mind, of our intellectual capacities, our capacities to reason and to make objective, in big air quotes, objective evaluations of circumstances. And I imagine that you, as I have, and I imagine that you as well, have had experiences where intellectually everything is pointing to the validity of a specific decision. And yet there's something in your gut, in your body, in your heart that says no, even though outwardly it looks like it makes perfect sense, like the option is clear, and yet there's this conflict, internal conflict around whatever that decision might be. And we are conditioned in so many ways to override that feeling of irritation, that feeling of disquietude. And when we do, my experience is that when I override that, that's when I get into trouble. And so it's interesting. I had a situation recently with a client where they were in a situation and they were certain that it existed one way, and then discovered that in fact that was wrong, like blatantly wrong, and that it existed an entirely different way. And when I addressed this with the client, they actually were able to admit that on some level they knew that it existed the other way. They knew that they were wrong, in other words, in their evaluation, their assessment of what was going on. And they had a clarity that was a visceral, physical knowing, and they chose to override it. They chose to not know. And because knowing would mean that they would have to think very differently about the person that was involved in this circumstance, as well as the ramifications. They would have to think very, very differently about things. And they were more convicted about being right and holding on to what they wanted to believe, rather than trusting the clarity that they actually had, that they muddied. So we tend to muddy the waters. We tend to want to believe what we want to believe and ignore what there is to know. And when we do that, it impedes our clarity, right? By necessity. The clarity, we lose clarity. We often don't want to take an action until we have clarity, which makes sense, right? It makes sense to come to a place of clarity before making, before making major life decisions. The question is, what are the criteria? What are our metrics for that clarity? Because when we know, we know. And maybe there aren't that many situations in life that really bring us to that level of clarity, where there's just this certainty that says, okay, this is what's next. There have been instances in my life where something arose as a choice that may or may not externally have made sense, but I had this inner drive, this inner knowing, and I took action because it was so clear. Sometimes we don't get that. We get to cultivate this inner awareness, this inner knowing, this integration, this embodiment of our knowingness that is not confined to the workings of our mind, that there's a body mind that we get to be in connection with. Maybe I should have called today's talk the body mind, because there's so much more wisdom in that aspect of our awareness. And the reason that it's not magical thinking to think that our gut knows better than our brain in so many instances. And the reason that it makes sense to be attending to the gut is because we process way more information through our other than conscious awareness than we do through our conscious awareness. So our minds, our brains are really filtering devices. They're not necessarily collecting devices. They're typically filtering devices, filtering information out so that we can focus our attention and do the things we need to do to continue to live. And when we have this visceral knowing, what's happening is that we're getting big signals from all these other things that are below our conscious awareness, or maybe above our conscious awareness, but let's say on a different plane from our conscious awareness. And so we're getting all these messages all the time that our body and being is processing, but not necessarily in a conscious fashion. In fact, so many of these signals are occurring at a plane that we have no conscious awareness of. And so when we have this visceral response, there's something that is going on. Now, it can be that visceral response is a result of a programmed reactivity. You know, maybe we had a really bad experience with a particular person, and then that person shows up and we have this visceral response that's awakening us to, you know, fight or flight, or to something that was past. Perhaps it's pulling us into the past. And I'm not saying that that's an elevated awareness necessarily in that particular moment, but it is our body responding also. So it's an alert for us to be paying attention rather than to be trying to pretend that impulse or that response isn't existing. The thing is that there's a communication and a relationship between the body and the mind, and the body mind, that we get to pay attention to and learn from. Good morning, Robin. So good to have you here with us. Welcome. We're talking about clarity and what clarity is, if it's a mental process or if it actually has a visceral component that may be even more pronounced and more profound and more accurate than our mental process. So Rosalind says, opposite of clarity is uncertainty. When I'm uncertain, there's a lot of second guessing. Clarity sometimes is an assumed position where we look for validation. Love is a visceral knowing. When I see animals, especially babies, my heart fills and I can't help but smile. And so it's interesting that you bring up the relationship with animals and baby animals, and this response that emerges. Like, there's the love that emerges. that's a visceral thing for sure. That love is not just an intellectual exercise, that there is a visceral component to that different levels of connection. And there are different levels of love, I believe. Maybe not when we're talking, love's such a tangle to talk about. So let's get back to clarity. I think that when we have true clarity about something, we don't look for validation. When we have that resonant feeling where body, mind unite, and we are in this alignment, there's clarity. There's no reason for any second guessing. There's no reason for any validation. And I think maybe the thing that could help us reach greater clarity is to be feeling more directly into our options, our choices. We can hold one choice and tune in and notice what we're aware of, the thoughts about it, we're aware of the case we can make for it. And then if we allow ourselves to be unattached, if we allow ourselves to be present to the physical response in our bodies, that can often open a door to a deeper knowing, a deeper awareness. So Robin says, having Wi-Fi issues, darn. Well, hopefully it'll get straightened out, and you'll be able to participate with us this morning. So have there been situations like when we just go about doing what we do, we often have, when we're in the flow, when we experience being in the flow, there's a clarity around that, right? There's a clarity that is enabling us to put one foot in front of the other without having to stop and question each motion, where there's a momentum that kind of opens the way. It's this beautiful dynamic of momentum, and there's an emergence as well as this I'm going to say forward motion. It's maybe not even a forward motion, maybe it's an expansive motion, like an in-breath that allows us to have this deeper sense of alignment. When we make intellectual arguments about things, when we take positions, when I'm talking about clarity, it's not about taking positions. It's not about point of view necessarily. I'm talking about clarity. It's interesting. I just got another dimension on this whole conversation about clarity and communication. And what does that look like? And that's a whole other conversation we can jump into in a minute. But Rosalind says, perhaps clarity is the ability to choose one way or the other, not because of preferences, but because the heart knows rather than the brain. The vision is the beacon and guiding light. Yes, that's what I'm talking about, is that our thoughts, we can manipulate our thoughts. We can manipulate our points of view in all different kinds of ways. And even though we might be able to justify something, we can still feel in our body and being that it's not in alignment. So that muddies the waters. Clarity and communication. I just want to dig into that for a little bit to play with those ideas. Clarity and communication is it's a very interesting topic. If you're communicating directly with someone and you're striving for clarity, it's not a one-way thing. It's a dynamic, because when you're speaking something, you don't know if that communication has been clearly delivered without the response from the other person or the other people. And that response can look like a verbal response, or it can look like a response based in action. We'll miss you, Robin. Sally, wow, hi, welcome. So good to have you here with us. It's been quite a while. Welcome. We're talking about clarity and communication right now. We're talking about being able to have sort of a dynamic, a feedback that is confirming whether there was clarity, whether there's sort of a mutual understanding or an alignment. And when we talk about clarity for ourselves, that's kind of the same idea, is that we're looking for this dynamic relationship between the thought and the feeling. That when there's this alignment, it's almost like gears fit into place, that it just goes clunk, and it's like, oh, okay, there's a fit. And then we know that, that then we have this sense of clarity, and we are taught to doubt our knowingness. And we get ourselves into all kinds of mischief as a result of not listening to what we know, because we don't want to know what we know. Sally says, oh, I love it. And then it feels so right. Yes, exactly. When we know, right? When we're clear, then it's like, okay, great. Now I know where to go or what to do. And oftentimes we are just in a place where we don't have that clarity. And so in those times, what we can do is we can connect more deeply to our awareness, to listen more deeply, to have patience, because maybe the fact that there's not clarity means that there's not a decision to be made in that moment. Like, should I do this? Should I do that? Well, if there's not, and I'm not a big proponent of shoulds, by the way. It's lazy language here to be using that, but would it be to my highest interest to do this or to do that? And maybe it's not the time for a choice between this and that. And so the lack of clarity may mean that it's not a significant choice, or that it's not the time for that choice, or that we get to just listen more gently. Maybe there's something more that needs to unfold before that clarity arises. And sometimes we just move forward until something more emerges. And that's okay too. That's okay too. Maybe that's the way that we get clarity, is by going in a little bit of a wrong direction, wrong in air quotes, and then we find out, oh no, that's not the way, that's not working, and we get to self-correct. So Sally says, I've been going through some of this with the passing of my mother, who is in transition now. Since receiving her energy, I have reached better understanding and clarity to the surrounding situation. Sally, I'm sorry so much. I'm so sorry for the challenges of the time that you're going through. Actually, I'm not sorry for it, because it sounds like you're rising to it, and you are allowing yourself to expand in the context of it. And and good for you. That's super empowering, to allow yourself to be truly present to the situation, and to enable yourself to have that in-breath with even the difficult times, even the times that may be breaking our hearts, that there are gifts in those moments too, and moving into it, leaning in rather than pulling away or avoiding. So congratulations to you for your clarity, for your courage, and wishing you grace around that. Sally says, yes, I was getting angry and wasting my energy and anger with my family over the choices, but I see it far clearer now. Love this conversation today. Thank you. You're so welcome. You're so welcome. And thank you for sharing what exactly what we're talking about is the clarity and listening, the willingness to listen. That's the challenge, because we have so much internal noise going on most of the time, that learning to listen or finding our path to listening is often just really, it takes deliberate concentration and a commitment. And it sounds like that's what you're doing. So congratulations to you. And may it be an enlightening process for all of you. And Rosalind says, communication can either have emotions behind the stories we tell, or it's how we show up, shine. Where information is stored like a library of references, clarity is not looking up a reference, it's speaking your truth because it's just known. That's really what we're getting to, Rosalind, and thank you for that. We're getting to the knowingness. And it's a blessing when we have that. I was just trying to unearth what it is that gives us that knowingness. And I think it is this deep sense of alignment, of embodiment, body-mind integration. And so I think I get to wrap it up with you there this morning. And maybe we muddied the waters, or maybe maybe we created some deeper clarity. Either way, we're kind of pressing through the veil, hopefully. That's it for this morning. I'm Mira Rubin. This is the Core Connection, and I go live here each weekday morning at 9 a.m. Eastern on the Enlightened World Network Facebook page and YouTube channel. And I invite you to check out the other awesome programming on Enlightened World Network and Enlightened World Living. And I'm so grateful to you for these conversations and your willingness to engage in them. And until next time.